أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Inshallah, this is the second week that we will study the topic of ijtihad, independent judgments of the law as it is translated. So they say my voice is little. Let me see audio settings. Is it any better now or no? Okay.
No, it's not that bad. I mean,
okay. Is it better now?
Maybe slightly. I mean, before it was slightly better, so that's the reason I thought. But let's continue, inshallah.
Okay. So the verse that we will study, or we have been studying, was from, it is chapter 4, I believe. Yeah, chapter 4, verse number 83. And the verse in Arabic reads like, وَلَوْ رَدُّوهُ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ وَإِلَى أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. This is the portion of the verse that the author takes. If they had only referred it to the prophet or those charged with authority among them, the proper investigators would have tested it from them direct. I would like to take you back to the verse again. وَإِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِّنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوِ الْخَوْفِ أَذَاعُوا بِهِ. And when they hear news of security or fear, they publicize it. وَلَوْ رَدُّوهُ, this is the portion that the author take. وَلَوْ رَدُّوهُ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ وَإِلَى أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. Had they referred it to the messenger or their authorities, those with sound judgment among them would have validated it. So, so yastanbitu, so this word, like validated it, is, I'm not sure if it is the best translation. Yastanbitu, this word is the same word with plant, nabat. Like as the plants come out of earth, this is why they are called nabat. And in here, the word refers to extracting meaning from revelation, scripture, events. So something happens, and then وَإِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِّنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوِ الْخَوْفِ, something that gives me security or fear. So I guess my default mode, unfortunately, is being just to publicize it. But the verse is saying that وَلَوْ رَدُّوهُ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ, and if they were to bring it to the prophet, so there's definitive prophet, it's not like to any prophet, anyone you would call a prophet, but to the prophet, وَإِلَى أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ, and from among them who are charged with duty, لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ, they would know how to extract meaning out of that. وَلَوْلَا فَضْلُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَرَحْمَتُهُ لَاتَّبَعْتُمُ الشَّيْطَانَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Had it not been for Allah's grace and mercy, you would have followed Satan except for a few. So this is the verse the author takes here. And he started with this intro 5 or 6 years ago in an Arabic treatise I wrote concerning a matter to do with independent judgments on point of Sharia. So in here he is specifying the topic of ijtihad that he is going to mention. Now, at the request of two of my brothers, this word was written about that matter in order to put in his place someone who had overstepped the mark in his attacks on it. So somebody apparently was going over his mark and making some judgments. So by the context of the verse and this initial paragraph, what I understand is somebody's trying to, as the verse was saying at the initial part of it, either publicizing it or without being the prophet or the ulul amr, without taking the matter to these two, somebody is driving some conclusion by themselves or claiming that it's okay to drive conclusions by themselves. So the author is addressing this. So this is, I guess, the context of this text. And today it's so relevant, the topic is relevant, because in this day and age of independence, or more so egotism, everybody says, I'm okay, I am like enough for whatever it's going to be. Well, it's not always though, but many of the times. And when it comes to especially religion, I guess this is being the popular standpoint. So last week we talked about the first and the second point. There are going to be, I think, 6 points. We talked about the first two. In the first one, the author was saying that in winter, when the storm comes, you would even block small holes. But trying to open a new door into that house, that castle, is going to make you get drowned. So in the name of ijtihad, you cannot open up new doors to the religion as if the already existing ones are not enough. And he is using a little bit of a strong language. He said that it's a crime against Islam. The second point, he said that it is, judgments are not to be made about the essential teachings of religion, because they're already established, like matters of belief, or the fundamentals of the prayer and fasting and whatnot. So these are not really, there's no room to make any questioning or conversation about them. They are established, they are solidified. So the author in here is saying that, but these fundamentals of religion are being ignored in this day and age. So you should be putting all your effort to reinforce these fundamentals, but which is not a topic of ijtihad. But leaving this aside, not touching this as if everything is okay with the fundamentals of Islam, opening up a discussion about the details and like the minute details of how to do fasting in such and such and such circumstances. Would it be okay if we do it as such and such and such type of things, is another type of a betrayal. Actually, that's the word he used. It's a betrayal of Islam. So in the second one, the author was sort of questioning the purpose of ijtihad is for the good of the people in terms of establishing their relationship with the Creator. And there are topics which are not a topic of ijtihad, the fundamentals, yet those fundamentals are the strongest ties, such as prayer or fasting, which will connect me to my Creator. And I am negligent when it comes to prayer. Then you are not being concerned about me not doing the prayer, but trying to start a conversation about the details of prayer. So the purpose of such a conversation is not the good of the people. And it's not to make people get connected with the Creator. It cannot be. The third. So this was a intro. Now let's start with the third. We haven't read this part yet. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The third. Just as varying goods in the market are sought after according to the season, they are in demand one after the other. So in the exhibition of the world and market of human society and civilization, every century, different goods are sought after and are in demand. They are displayed in the market. Demand attracts them. Cases are turned on them. Minds are drawn by them. So, like if you go to, this is sort of a example that makes more sense if you go to farmer's market, not to supermarket nowadays, because in the supermarket you can find tomato or, I don't know, peach or orange any season. But in the farmer's market, if you go to the farmer's market, you will in each season, there would be a different type of fruit or vegetable, which is the prime thing being sold in there. And for example, in the spring, when you go, oh, it's time for strawberries. So everybody would be rushing towards strawberries. So when it comes to summer, so now it's time for apricots. So everybody rushes to apricots. So this is the example that the author gives. He says this also applies to the exhibition of the world and the market of human society and civilization. Every century, different goods are sought after and are in demand. And then he gives an example, like at the present time, the goods of politics and securing the life of this world and the demand of philosophy are sought after, for example. So he listed three. One is politics. The second one is securing the life of this world. And the third one is philosophy. These are the most sought after goods in the market of current civilization. And at the time of the first generations of Islam and in the market of that age, deducing from the word of the creator of the heavens and the earth, his wishes and what he wants of us were the most sought after goods. And obtaining the means to gain through the light of prophethood and the Quran, eternal happiness. Let me reread this again. And obtaining the means to gain through the light of prophethood and the Quran, eternal happiness in the world of the hereafter, which had been revealed to such a degree, it could not be concealed. It's a little bit of a long sentence, but what I understand, if I can summarize it, although in today's time, it is politics, philosophy, and securing the worldly life is our prime matter that we are in high demand of. At the time of the messenger and the first generation that follows him, the most sought after thing was, what does our creator wish from us? Did you sing from his speech, what does my creator, like the creator of the heavens and the earth, wishes and he wants from us? And also, how do we get to eternal happiness? These were the major concerns of those people. Minds were occupied with those questions, and their efforts were in that direction to reach that goal. At that time, since people's minds, hearts, and spirits were directed with all their strength towards understanding the wishes of the sustainer of the heavens and the earth, the discussions, conversations, events, and circumstances of social life all looked at that. Since they occurred in accordance with those wishes, whoever had high ability, whoever had some sort of a potentiality, his heart and nature unconsciously received instructions in knowledge of God from everything. He received knowledge from the circumstances, events, and discussions which took place at that time, as though everything became a teacher for such a person, and inculcated in his nature and disposition the preparatory knowledge for independent judgments. The natural instruction illuminated him to such a degree that he was almost capable of interpreting the law without acquiring the knowledge, to be illuminated without fire. Thus, when someone capable who received such natural instructions in this way began to work at interpreting the law, his capacity, which had become like a match, like the match that you light a fire with, his capacity, which had become like a match, manifested the mystery of light upon light. He became Nurun ala Nur. So the author is referring here to the verse of Nur in the chapter of Nur. He became qualified to interpret it. So he became mujtahid swiftly and in a brief time. So again, very briefly, I'll summarize what I hear. So at such a time where the number one priority or the concern of people were to understand what my creator and the creator of heavens and the earth want from me, and how can I understand this from his speech, his words, scripture, the entire life, social life, personal life was turning around that. The conversations were on that, the events were happening on that. So it was as if Quran was being revealed, especially for the first generation, as they were living life. So something was happening, and literally the context of the verse was their lives. I mean, although we should be taking it as such as well, but we are far, far away from that understanding in general, unfortunately. But for the first generation, this was literally the case. Second generation find themselves in that environment. So the conversation, give and take, everything was happening based on what does our creator want from us. And in such an environment, if somebody had some sort of a potentiality, like that person is, let's say, smart, or he has good memory, or he has skill in interpretation, like what sort of a tiny, even if it is tiny, potentiality there, in such an environment, that potentiality is learning without putting effort in there, because the environment is like that. Like, for instance, to give an example, we were going to Tarawih during Ramadan, and our little Bishra, just hearing Surah Fatiha being recited several times in the environment, she's just playing in the environment. She's not putting effort. Nobody tells her to memorize anything. I mean, this little girl, not even 3 years old, already gets very much familiarized with Fatiha, so much so that when her mother just recites Surah Fatiha once or twice to her, she starts repeating Surah Fatiha. Like, it's not a huge chapter, like 7 verses and whatnot, but it's a huge thing for such a small mind to do that. Normally, you would say. But since she was in that environment, so it became so quote unquote natural for her. So she was just as if receiving it from the environment. And once even a tiny effort is put, like mother reciting the chapter once or twice, we realize that she already memorized the chapter. Likewise, at the time of Prophet and the first generation right after him, this was the environment. And the example that I gave is just about memorization, but think about it, just somebody having like a bit more smart, let's say, or have ability to interpret things. When in such an environment, you see that people are establishing relationship with the life, and the verses that are revealed, you already get that training automatically from the environment. And if you have this slightest potentiality and somebody encourages you, and then such people became scholars very quickly. That's what the author is saying. And he is in here, actually very beautifully, the author made this as an interpretation for a verse. I can grab it, but maybe not now. So from Surah Nur, there's a verse that's called Ayatul Nur, the verse of Nur, the verse of light, which talks about this light of the Creator. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, mathalu nurihi kamishkatin fiha misbah, and it goes on like this. The author in here refers to that verse, and he says actually this verse is, in a sense, describing Sahaba. Or you can also generalize it. It describes an ideal environment in which somebody is going to get illuminated from the scripture, from the revelation. But one point that I would like to highlight here is, in there, the verse mentions a light that shines without fire. And the author in here refers to this, saying that to be illuminated without fire. And fire in here, as far as I understand, refers to, they don't need to put too much effort for like scholarly work as you would need to put, or I would need to put in this day and age. Like this, fire of putting a lot of effort was not necessary for them because the environment was already very much diluted with this elements in there. So thus, I will reread this part and continue with the next paragraph. Thus, when someone capable, someone with potentiality, who received such natural instruction in this way, began to work, when such a person began to work at interpreting the law, his capacity, which had become like a match, and as you know, those matches that are used for lighting a fire, it is as if they are like this chemical which is ready to burst into flames with even the slightest increase in the temperature. So this was already prepared for them. The only thing you need to do is to strike it to that surface and it catches fire. And this is exactly what is happening in there, he says. So their capacity, which had become like a match, manifested the mystery of light upon light. He became qualified to ijtihad swiftly, very quickly, and in a brief time. Okay, Brother Birkan, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. So these two paragraphs that we read, so I guess we can benefit from them in different ways. The one way is, the obvious one, which is the author is explaining why, in general, so it might be different for one or two people, the specific person, but in general, that at our time, we having difficulty of understanding and interpreting things, and author is explaining why. He's giving some reasons and so on. Another way is, I guess, showing us a way to make ourselves, our maybe next generations, capable of such a natural instinct to interpret or understand light upon light. So he says, that this is what I understand, is he says, like, okay, if you like to become ulul amr, the one who has, I don't know how you translate, maybe authority, maybe right understanding, maybe a reliable person. If you want to become this, then this is how you do it. You should be surrounded by all these, the inputs, where everybody like you trying to understand what makes our Creator happy. So that should be your only concern. And not only you, but everything around you should be designed in that way. So when you go to school, everybody is trying to understand the Creator's intentions, or the riza, how he would be pleased. You go to a shopping center, and again, the cashier that you would work with, his or her principal primary concern would be the Creator's the pleasure. And then in the family, and you quickly realize that there's not an easy thing, and you would start respecting more how the first generations were really a kind of a different than us. So respect, I guess this is what we miss most. We think when it comes to religion, because it's personal, right? This is how we taught, that the religion is a personal thing. You do it when you are alone, you just read some books and understand that this is your religion. It doesn't matter where you shop, it doesn't matter what school you go, it doesn't even matter whom you are married to. It's very personal. So as long as, in you think about the creator, that's enough. But the author says, no, this is not true. I'm sorry. Where you live, whom you are living with, what kind of school you go, what kind of supermarket you buy your things. It will all contribute to your understanding, your state. If you want to change this, start with your children, for instance. Give them an environment in which they can flourish in that sense. So taking it serious, approaching it sincerely, that the religion is my life, and there is nothing other than religion in my life. So it is not true that as long as I read my Quran, I understand it, even if I spend all my life with people who doesn't believe, who do not believe, who act against the Quranic wisdom and my understanding of Quran, it doesn't matter. No, this is not true, author says. So insincerity is the biggest, I guess, the missing point in our life compared to these first generations. So we can benefit from these two paragraphs in this way as well. Like it tells us, okay, this is how you can change your life, how you can change your children's life. Try to provide them such an environment. Jazakallah khairan.
Jazakallah. Yes. So then for each point, actually, let's try to read it as this as well. So as if the author is, because this is how he started, the door of ijtihad is open, but there are 6 obstacles to enter there. So the door to ijtihad is open, but at the present time, there are 6 obstacles to entering it. So which, as you suggested, we can read it as, then try to remove those obstacles and then try to, for sure, go and do your ijtihad. Then it would become a need for you. Right now, it's not a need for you because you first need to go and fix these 6 obstacles. So Jazakallah khair, this was a good point. Okay, so I continue with the rest of the paragraph. At this time, however, now he talked about what it was. So initially, he made a general statement about this market and demand. In the second paragraph, he talked about what was in highest demand at the first generation of Islam. And now he says, compares it to current time. At this time, however, due to the domination of European civilization, let's say it as Western civilization, and the supremacy of natural philosophy and the preponderance of the conditions of worldly life, minds and hearts have become scattered. So just a second, that word was too heavy. I need to, okay. So this preponderance of the conditions of worldly life, meaning the conditions of worldly life became so heavy. Like in the olden times, you just need a few stuff and you would consider yourself to be a happy living person. Now, now that with the social media and everything, we see how rich people live like, and all of their lives becomes a need for us. And I need to have this, update my phone every few years and update my car and whatnot. So those needs make the conditions of worldly life heavy because it comes with a price. How am I going to be able to find the means to buy all this stuff, right? So I'm reading it from the beginning again. At this time, however, due to the domination of the Western civilization and the supremacy of natural philosophy, I think, so just natural philosophy being, I don't know, this is not the best translation. Brother Birkan, would you have any other suggestion?
I mean, I don't have the Turkish, but I would say the dominance of maybe natural philosophy.
Okay, dominant.
Yeah, natural philosophy being the default understanding of the universe.
Or even the original word is tasallut, which sounds like bullying of the natural philosophy to me.
That's even better. That's even better, yeah.
Yeah. So because natural philosophy bullies anything other than itself, like it says there's no purpose, no meaning, things happen by naturally, randomly, and whatnot. And whatever alternative idea you will try to come up with, you are going to be badly bullied. And you can test it for yourself, open up a Twitter account. I mean, you don't need to publish a paper about that, you cannot, but even just include scientists in your Twitter and make a comment about something that goes against this, you're going to be bullied so badly. So at this time, however, due to the domination of Western civilization and the bullying of natural philosophy and the conditions of worldly life getting so much complicated and heavier, minds and hearts have become scattered and endeavor and favor divided. So our minds and hearts have become scattered. That's, I think, easy to understand. Endeavor and favor divided, what I understand from this is, like, if securing my whatever I am going to eat today was my only worry in terms of my worldly life in the old days, I could have done it by maybe working for 3 months, 4 months, a year, in which you were just a farmer and whatnot, or whatever type of art you were doing, you just work it part of the day, you earn your money, and that's all you care about, you eat the food. Then the rest of the time and your mind can now be focusing on other stuff, as he was mentioning about. But because of these three philosophies also there, it's pulling my mind from thinking about the purpose and meaning to and channeling it towards a world in which there is no meaning, no purpose. So the endeavor and favor is getting divided. Minds have become strangers to non-material matters. Thus, it is because of this that if someone now was to memorize the Quran at the age of 4 and have the intelligence of a mujtahid like Sufyan ibn Uyayna, who held discussions with religious scholars at an early age, he would need 10 times longer than Sufyan to become qualified to interpret the law. If Sufyan acquired the learning in 10 years, this man would need 100 years. Because the period of Sufyan's natural study began at the age of reason. So once he started to distinguish right from wrong, or like as he started to have some sort of a reason, his natural study began. His disposition and abilities were slowly prepared and illuminated. They took lessons from everything and became like a match. But his counterpart at the present time, since his thought is submerged in philosophy, his mind plunged in politics, and his heart giddy at the life of this world, his disposition and abilities have grown distant from interpretation of the law. For sure, they have become distant from interpretation of the Sharia to the degree they have been preoccupied with the modern sciences and have remained backward in regard to it to the extent he has become learned in the physical sciences. Therefore, he may not say, I am as intelligent as him. Why can't I on a level with him? Why can not be like him? He does not have the right to say this, and he cannot be on a level with him. So this is a very interesting point, because the author is also, oh yeah, Brother Bikan, before I go further, please go ahead.
I'm okay with you going first as well. So I'm giving you 3 seconds to decide, and then otherwise I will.
Okay, so let me then quickly finish. So this paragraph is also hinting that to the extent that I start saying I know something, I feel like I'm capable of knowing anything, which is an interesting point. Like as if I become a like I do a PhD in computer science or whatever, some engineering, some medicine, some philosophy, and start feel like I am able to pass judgment about whatever is my expertise, which is showing that I am smart within that territory, but at least there is some sort of an intellect going on there. So then this is, with that, I am saying that, I am as smart as Sufyan ibn Uyayna. He was just another man, people's intellect is distributed uh, more or less the same across ages. So he studied, so I can study, and I can manage to make such a conclusion. So the author says it's not only about intellect. His education started early, and the quality of education, the natural education that he got, is way different than what you can ever take in the current environment that you are in. And especially if you are, if your mind is, let's say, became narrower and narrower with the naturalistic perspectives, and your heart is so much attached to this worldly life and has nothing to do with the afterlife, or to the extent that it is more inclined to this world rather than what is to come eternally, then it's not a matter of intellect only. Brother Birkan, please go ahead.
Jazakallah khairan. So, like when we read such things, it sounds counterintuitive. For one reason, it says as if, like, because you are living in this age, for you there's no way to become a real scholar, no matter what you do. So you are, like, you were born unlucky, and the other people, they're born lucky, so their environment was better and so on. But I think we would miss, with such a reading, we would miss the fact that everything author describes, more or less, depends on our choices. So again, for instance, with our children, how many of us thinks more about their iman, about their hereafter, afterlife, more than what they will earn in this life, what kind of people they would marry, what kind of house they will live, what kind of job they would have. How many of us, or let's say, let's talk about the one person, how many hours of a day or a week Birkan thinks about little Bushra, and this thinking is about her hereafter, but not, again, what kind of school she will go, what kind of people she will marry, what job she will have, whether she will have enough money to buy a car for herself and a sport car for her father. Which one occupies my mind more? So we should ask this question. Do we start their education, the real education, at early ages, or just look around you, especially the people who with the religious background, and look at their children? What is the main concern? As long as children is getting a proper, quote unquote, education, a decent education, we don't care whether it's a secular or not. As long as children is with, the elite people, elites to the children of the neighborhood, not with the poor, mostly dark-skinned, immigrant children, but rather more light-skinned, richer, with better educated moms and the fathers, if they're spending their time with these kind of kids, we are more happy. And that's our primary concern. We don't even try to educate them. We say, oh, do you know what? My children will find their own path. Of course they will. But our concern is not what kind of path they would find. Oh, they should, choose their own religion. Of course, they will choose whatever we do. Even if we try to make them Muslim by force, it won't work. Like we cannot, fool ourselves. But what is our concern? Are we concerned about what kind of life they will live with respect to, in relationship to their creator, their hereafter? I was talking to a colleague once upon a time, and he was saying, as long as my girl does not end up some inappropriate place, doesn't matter the exact word he used, I don't mind, he would say. Okay, I would say, he's from a secular background, I can understand, but is it any different with me? Do I care about my education, or do I care about my house? Do I care about my children's education, or do I care about, again, their future wealth? How much money I would leave them? So I guess we should stop fooling ourselves. Like when we read such text, and when someone like the author is saying that, oh, these people, I'm sorry, but they were different than you, I would say, yes, I respect that. They were different than me. And I understand this, and I accept this, and I, confirm this with my own life. I guess the second point is, again, this is still counterintuitive, even if we take this way, even if we are honest to ourselves. It sounds as if, again, there is nothing that we can do. There is, no benefit of knowing this difference. But such a reading, again, now misses the point that we can benefit from these generations, these earlier generations. So we should also stop fooling ourselves by putting a huge divide between them and us. We have connection with them, whether we accept it or not. What kind of connection, inshallah, we will study tomorrow and the day after in our retreat. But there is a connection. There's a lively connection between our generations and their generations. Their generations were assigned as teachers, and our generations are assigned as students. This is our qadr. And being respectful to our qadr, we should be the best students. We should do our best to learn from them, rather than just saying that, oh, they were historical figures, we cannot, benefit from them. No, you can. Just like you benefit from your professor, your secular professor, and you are happy with this, you can benefit from them as well, even in a more livelier manner. You can. So be the best student that you can. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you. Very beautiful points, very valid points. So, and yeah, I agree that what is going to be my take from here, am I bound to be the loser? So even asking that question of being loser in this setup means as if I am, what's the word? Envious of their position, of their status. But what we are describing in here as status is being an abd, actually. So I even take this position as if like a worldly rank, and I would like to be at that rank. As you were saying, they are given the role of the teacher, and I am given the role of the student. So now it is up to me to play my role, or I don't know, become an abd in the setup that I am created in. Otherwise, I'm going to make it another arena for competition, which shouldn't be made an arena for competition. Like afterlife is not something to make a competition about. If I am doing so, then that means I'm totally losing the point. Okay. So let's continue with the fourth. Just as within a body is the inclination to expand for its growth and development, and since it is from within, the inclination to expand is a being perfected for the body. Whereas if it is an inclination for expansion from outside, it is to rip the body's skin, to destroy it. It's not expansion. So I guess for my skin, I can use this example. Like a little baby, as the baby grows, the skin grows within. And it's for the development, it's growing, it's beautiful, nothing is wrong. But if I try to expand the skin by pulling it off from outside, it's going to destroy the skin. It's not an expansion. So if the growth is from within, then it's good. If trying to expand something is from outside, then it's destruction. In the same way, when the inclination to expand and will to interpret the law were present in those within the sphere of Islam, through the door of perfect taqwa, and the way of conforming to the essential teachings of Islam, like the righteous early generations, that was a perfection and a being perfected. But if such an inclination and desire come from those who give up the essentials, prefer the life of this world to that of the hereafter, and are tainted with materialist philosophy, it is the means of destroying the body of Islam and casting off the chain of the Sharia from the neck. So, just a second, I was get caught with one word in the. Okay, so in the translation, there was one word off. Let me read it again. In the same way, so if the inclination to expand and will to interpret the law were present in those who entered the sphere of Islam through the door of perfect taqwa. So I would like to update this part. Who entered the sphere of Islam through the door of perfect taqwa. So the way that they are entering to the Islam through taqwa, being God conscious, being extremely careful about what my creator would be asking from me. What is expected from me? This question being at the top of my mind. And when doing something, the next question being, is what I am doing, how I am feeling, how I am thinking, how I am acting, is this aligned with my maker, my creator's wish? So this is what I understand as taqwa. So entering Islam with this mindset means at every step of my life, I am turning back, raising my head and saying, oh, is my creator happy with that? Because the consciousness here is everything given to me is a trust. So does the owner of the trust happy with the way I am using it? So is this question mark there? This is what I understand from entering the sphere of Islam through the door of perfect taqwa. This is one. Then he says the way of conforming to the essential teachings of Islam. Then he says it then becomes a a inclination for expansion from within. But if the person who talks about ijtihad, if I am entertaining the idea of coming up with a new interpretation to the religion, let's say, I say, well, I studied Western philosophy, or I came to a new society in which I see, oh, they do things, and it's a nice approach. It sounds cool. So, well, this works. I can remember my creator like this as well. So, I mean, this is type of a prayer. Why not? Or my body is my sanctuary. My masjid is my body. So it sounds, mosque is not just the four walls. That's fine. And then I say, well, my body is my sanctuary. And then I am trying to, praise my body, making it a temple, sort of. Like, just some simple examples of this alternative. If such an inclination and desire come from those who give up the essentials, prefer the life of this world to that of the hereafter, and tainted with materialist philosophy, such a person's inclination to expand the religion is a means of destroying the body of Islam and casting off the chain of Sharia. Brother Birkam, please.
Jazakallah khairan. Another really important point here. So, what is the driving force of looking for a change? Right? We're talking the ijtihad, like the interpreting the law or the Sharia and trying to adapt it to a new context. And as author says, conceptually, trying to adapt the Quranic teaching to a new context is something good. It's a means of perfection. It's like, trying to see a new fruit of the tree, trying to eat a new fruit that we never eaten before. This is a means of perfection. But again, what is the driving force for that? So the other day I was sending an email saying that, like, we have a machine that has multiple users. So the multiple users can use it. And some of these users have some extra rights. They can change things in the machine. And I was saying that, you have this right, but please use it for the benefit of the machine, not yours. Like, if machine needs to be fixed, if when you make this change, it would make machine better, then use your rights, use your power to make the change. But do not use your power to make a change in the machine so that it will benefit you, your desire. So I guess the same way, so author is saying here is that if you think this interpretation is needed to make your connection, your relationship with God better, if this is the intention, yes, you should definitely do it, and it will take you to perfection. But if the driving force is rather that, of course, the God is important, my relationship with my God is important, but I'm living this life in which, I need to buy this or that, I have to eat this or that. So I'm trying to find a way to clear my path so that I can reach this house or reach to, whatever I'm trying to eat. So this is my, the intention usually. So whether we can listen music or not. So nobody asking this question, at least, let's say, when it comes to me, when I ask this question, my relationship with my creator is irrelevant. So if I'm, for instance, willing to listen to music, it's not because I think the music will, make my connection to my creator stronger, or vice versa. Not listening music, I don't think it will make it stronger or weaker. I don't even care about it. All I care whether I can listen music or not. So of course, these are naive examples, but then there are also other things that author mentions. So the main driving force in our lives, he says, is coming from outside. Outside meaning not from the Quranic perspective. We say, oh yeah, but the religion doesn't they comply with the human rights as understood by the European Union, or it does not comply with the standards, norms defined by, let's say, the liberals of United States. It does not comply with the norms that are taught to us in our academic institutions. I'm a scientist. What am I supposed to do? This is our concern. Who cares about whether you are scientist or artist or shoemaker? How this is relevant when it comes to your hereafter? So the driving force, I guess, is not coming from inside. It's not about making our connection stronger. So when it comes to first generations, as author says, for instance, when they discuss whether let's say the ladies should pray together with gentlemen or separate, their only concern was, at least, this is how I see it from these narrations. Their concern, their justification was which one would make our prayer more sincere, more humble, more conscious of my creator. The relationship with my creator would be stronger. Which one of them? That was their concern. But when it comes to ourselves, what is our concern? What other people would think, or whether it is, we are living in a different century. The human rights, women rights, or men's rights. It's never about our worship anymore. Whether this kind of person can lead the prayer or not. What is the purpose again there? What is concern again there? Do we think that, if he or she would lead the prayer, my prayer would be better? Is this our concern? On what grounds? Or is our concern is about the human rights defined by some, elite nations or democracies or certain selected, chosen, the societies who decide what is right and wrong for humanity? When it comes from the outside, what we're trying to do, what we are doing is nothing but just tearing up our religion, our worship, our beliefs. Jazakallah khairan.
I guess when you were referring to our religion, you mean my religion. So my connection with my creator, this is what I am tearing up. Of course, in the larger scale, I am tearing up the religion of Islam to the extent that I'm going to become a teacher of it to my, let's say, family and whatnot. But in my personal life, first and foremost, I am tearing this up. And then in the larger scale, yes, I'm also spreading such a corrupt version or interpretation of Islam to the people, also betraying them, saying that this is how it should be. This is how I speak. I say, oh, this is how Islam can be understood as, and I declare this openly to the people, then it's another problem. So I think there are two steps here. One is making ijtihad for yourself, and then trying to make this ijtihad applicable to others. I think this is called tashri', making it a sharia for others as well, which now spreads the corruption that I did for myself. So I guess at this point, I will need to ask myself, how do I enter Islam? What is my motivation? Am I entering it with taqwa? Is my purpose of submitting to the Creator to become an abd? Or am I trying to preserve some personal space in there for myself? In which I would say, and actually, the time of Rasulullah's, like around him, certain people, when they came to religion, they were asking for some personal space. The unbelievers or the munafiqs, the hypocrites, they were saying that, okay, if I get into religion, what is for me was the question. So looking for some sort of a personal space in there. I'm going to get in there. I will give up some things, but not fully. Still, I would like some personal space in which I would say, okay, God is, this portion of life belongs to the Creator, but that portion of it belongs to me. Still, I am somewhat of a, although little, God within my territories. So is this what is in my heart? I guess I need to ask that question. On the other hand, the believer attitude should be, when they entered the religion, they were saying, what does my Creator expect from me? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to feel, think, act? So I think this, from this fourth, I'm taking this as a personal question for myself. What is my relationship with Islam? Am I within that sphere of Islam, or I am practically outside of that sphere, but maybe only as a cultural identity, I associate myself with Islam and then try to, or attempt owning it and hoping to make modifications on it, or seeing the right in myself to do as such. Okay, so the fifth, this is a bit long. We can start reading and see how it goes, and then next week we can start from here again. The fifth, 3 points of view make interpretation of the law earthly at this time and prevent it being heavenly. So this is an interesting wording that the author uses. So ijtihad, he says ijtihad. Okay, let me finish the sentence and then make the comment. Whereas the Sharia is heavenly, revealed, and since interpretations of it make known its hidden ordinances, they are also heavenly. So ijtihad needs to be heavenly, like related to sama, using the Quranic term. Ijtihad should not be earthly, like ard, the Arabic word that's used in here. So the author in here is putting an interesting concept in front of us. What does it mean for ijtihad to be earthly? What does it mean for ijtihad to be heavenly? He says ijtihad should be heavenly because Sharia is heavenly. It came from Sama, it came from the maker of the universe. So Sharia, ijtihad means extracting meanings from Sharia, like interpreting it. So it has to be heavenly. It cannot be from earth. Brother Birkan.
This is indeed interesting, very, very interesting, because the way we think the Sharia, what is Sharia, if you ask me, I would say the Sharia is to regulate my life. This is how I understand Sharia, right? I would say the rules, do's and don'ts, or maybe the patterns that I should follow in my life. So Sharia, for instance, regulates how I interact with the opposite sex, how I interact with my food, how I walk, how I talk to my superiors, how I worship, but again, the physical aspects, how I cleanse myself, and so on. This is Sharia, we say. Author says the Sharia is heavenly. Sharia is revealed. So it means it's not, its main purpose, it's not to regulate our lives. So this is really interesting. This is like the Sharia is there to save our hereafter, our relationship with our Rabb. So this is interesting in both ways. Like the one is even the people who are supposed to be religious, like ourselves, we take Sharia and make it worldly, so there's no value in it anymore. And when the second part is when we talk about ijtihad, the interpreting the Sharia, again, it's all about worldly life. Since Sharia is the regulation for our worldly life, the ijtihad interpretation is also making it more, adaptive to adapt to our current worldly life.
So, if you don't mind, I will interrupt very quick. What do you mean
Sure,
by
please.
Sharia not regulating my worldly life? Is it not regulating? Like it says, do the prayer this time, start fasting that time, and whatnot, or give this much money to the poor. What do you mean by it is not regulating worldly life?
So when Sharia tells me give that much money to the poor, for instance, the Sharia is telling me this not to save the rizq or the food of the poor, or to to balance the wealth on the earth. It tells me to do that so that my relationship with my creator is established. So yeah, I'm a human being. Whatever I do, whatever I believe, it will manifest within this world. So there is no escape from that. So I cannot know the risk giver, the sustenance giver or sustainer. I cannot know the sustainer without interacting with sustenance. That's I'm a human. So to that extent, or within this, from this perspective, yes, it is about the worldly life. But it is not for the worldly life. It is for, again, regulating, establishing my relationship with my sustainer. So therefore, for instance, with your example, it's not to, they give some certain wealth to poor people or the balanced wealth. So when we try to make interpretation of it, we cannot start from some statistics about the poor and the rich and how wealth is distributed and not distributed, and making some, the models of charity so that the wealth will be better distributed and so on and so forth. We cannot start from that. We have to start by asking whether the current, the state of charity, or however you want to call it, the what is the word for it? The Arabic word? Giving money to sadaqah. Okay, let's say. We should start by questioning that whether current state of sadaqah, how we perform sadaqah giving, whether it is helping us enough to establish my relationship with sustainer or not? That should be our starting point. And then once we, try to address these questions, when we interpret it, when we follow a certain way of sadaqah giving, yes, it will have some other, the benefits as well, like the distribution of the wealth and so on. But the Sharia is not for that. Sharia is by that, meaning like I have to apply it through my daily life, within my daily life, as the Sharia, is substantiated by the worldly life, but not for the worldly life. I'm not sure if I'm clear.
Well, thank you, Jazakallah khair. Yes, so Sharia regulates worldly life, not for the worldly life, but through regulating worldly life, it carries me to the skies or heaven, or like using the metaphor of heaven versus earth here. Yes, I live a life on earth, but this life on earth is the only means, if you like, of me to reach the purpose of the existence, the meaning, what my creator asks from me. So this is the medium that I'm working on. So Sharia puts restrictions or tells me something to do or not to do, but the purpose, as you said, is not to, as in the example you gave, make the wealth distribution equalized across the population. I mean, this is a byproduct of that, but this is not the primary goal of Sharia. The goal of Sharia here is that by giving, I'm going to realize that I am not the owner, because the owner commands me to give, therefore I give. And even when the wealth distribution is established within the society, it is not for the purpose of society having a equal wealth distribution, but rather to observe the creator as all just. So I think it's looking at the purpose and the outcome of Sharia from that lens versus earthly meaning, just, let's feed the poor so that they're not going to suffer hunger. Why? Because feeling of hunger is bad, so I don't want to do it. I don't want to have it. Nobody should have it because I'm a good person, therefore I give it. So this sort of a perspective is earthly. Okay, so I will read it. We have 7 minutes left, but I think it might be nice to read it only once. The first. Okay, so 3 points of view make interpretation of the law earthly at this time and prevent it being heavenly. What are those 3? The first, the wisdom of an ordinance is one thing, while the reason for it is something different. Wisdom versus reason. The wisdom of an ordinance is one thing, while the reason of it is something different. Wisdom and benefit are the cause of its choice, cause of choosing it, not the means of being necessitated and created. And the reason is the means for its existence. Let's try to understand this through the example. For example, the obligatory prayers are shortened while traveling. 2 rak'ats are performed. Rather than 4, they become 2. The reason for this permission of the Sharia is the journey. The reason is the journey, while its wisdom is the hardship. If there is the journey, but no hardship, the prayers are still shortened. For there is the reason. The reason is valid and existing, which is the travel. But if there is no journey yet, yet hardship, it may not be the reason for shortening the prayers. So the wisdom is there, the hardship, but the reason is not there, journey. It may not be the reason for shortening the prayers. Thus, Contrary to this fact, the view at this time, at this age, is to set up the benefit and wisdom in place of the reason, and to make its judgment in accordance with that. Such an interpretation is certainly earthly, not heavenly. Okay. The second, the view at the present time looks primarily to worldly happiness, whereas the view of the Sharia looks primarily to happiness in the hereafter, and to happiness in this world in second place, and indirectly as the means to the hereafter. That is to say, the view of this time is a stranger to the spirit of the Sharia, in which case it may not make interpretations in its name. The third, there is a rule: necessity makes permissible what is forbidden. This rule is not universal. So long as it is not by way of what is forbidden, necessity makes licit what is forbidden. So I'm paraphrasing this. As long as the necessity didn't occur through some forbidden path, then only then it can make what is forbidden into permissible. There will come an example for that. But if something has become a necessity due to abuse and for illicit reasons, this necessity may not be the basis of ordinance permitting it, nor form an excuse. For example, if through ill choice someone makes himself drunk in an awful way, according to the scholars of Sharia, his actions act against him, and he may not be counted as excused. If he divorces his wife, the divorce is in force. And if he commits a crime, he receives the punishment. But if it is not through ill choice, like if being drunken is not through ill choice, the divorce is not in force, neither does he receive punishment. And for example, even if an alcoholic is addicted to alcohol to the degree of necessity, meaning without drinking, he gets into coma, so it becomes a necessity for that person, he may not say it is a necessity and lawful and permissible for me. Why? Because this becoming necessity or becoming addict of it happened because of using my choice in the wrong way. Thus, at this time, there are many matters which have reached the degree of necessity and have taken on the form of a general calamity afflicting people, and which, since they have arisen from ill choice, illicit desires, and forbidden acts, may not be the basis of ordinances permitting them and making what is unlawful into lawful. However, since those who make interpretations at the present time make those necessities the basis of ordinances of the Sharia, their interpretations are earthly, the products of their own fancies, tainted by philosophy, and cannot be heavenly or revealed, or in accordance with the Sharia. However, if exercise of authority concerning the divine ordinances of the Creator of the heavens and the earth, and interference in the worship of his servants is without the Creator's permission, that exercise of authority and interference are rejected. Okay, I think we can stop here. Any closing remarks? Because he's going to give an example for this point that he mentioned, these 3 points. If no comments, we can stop here and we can quickly start from the 5th again next week and continue with the example, inshallah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Brother Bikan, I saw your microphone on. We're going to make a comment. No. وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.